So thank you all for joining us. I see that Barb has put us into live stream and we are being recorded.
Yes, we are.
Thank you. So the first item on the agenda is a Pledge of Allegiance. And we have siblings from 2 different schools. So I'm assuming, Principal Voorhees, that you're going to be introducing these kiddos for us?
Yes, I have Sanaa from Franklin and Olivia from McKinley. And girls, can you say hi so I can see you pop up on my screen?
Hi.
Where are you? Oh, there they are. There they are. And mom is with them. So mom is Tahisha Ayala Dean. She's a first grade teacher here at McKinley. They moved here. We're so excited to have them here. Tahisha has been a first grade teacher for 15-ish years in New York. And she just decided to move to the Pacific Northwest, and we were lucky enough to win her over, and she chose McKinley. She had a few other places over in the Seattle area she was looking at, and we hit it off and just loved her from the get-go. We're so excited to have her. So I asked both her girls, Olivia and Sanaa, to do the pledge for us today.
That's wonderful. Tahisha, is that correct? Did I say your name correctly?
Yes.
You're on mute.
Can you hear us?
Yes, we can.
Yes, that's correct, Tahisha.
Thank
You're
you.
on mute.
Thank you for being here with your girls. This is exciting. We don't often have siblings doing this, much less siblings from 2 different schools. So we're very pleased to have you with us today. Mrs. Anderson is going to post the flag on the screen. And when you see that, feel free to start whenever you're ready and we will join you.
Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. We have a threesome instead of just a duo today. That's wonderful. I wonder, girls, if you have a minute, we have 4 board members here today, and I think they'd all like to say thank you for leading us in the pledge. This is one of our very favorite things to do, is to have students lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and they may have a question or 2 for you, okay?
Okay.
All right. Mr. Navarro.
Yes, thank you, Martha. Hello, guys. Nice to meet you. My name is Raymond. Just want to thank you for spending a few minutes with us and leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you for your leadership. I just wanted to ask you what your favorite subjects in school are, or your number 1.
I like math and
Math
and science.
and science. All right.
I like art.
Art, you're an artist, huh? And I want to say hi to your mom as well. And Tanisha, thank you for lending your girls to us for a few minutes. And thank you for coming to the Yakima, and welcome to the Yakima School District. We're just happy to have you. So thank you very much, guys. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Let's
Yes.
just go over to you guys.
Thank you, Raymond. Mr. Walker.
Hi, girls. Welcome to Yakima. That must be a big change to come from New York to Yakima. Did you live in New York City?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. What was your favorite thing to do in the city?
Stay at home and go on my iPad.
She said stay at home and play on her iPad.
Oh, having fun with your iPad. Well, you can do that anywhere, can't you?
I like going to all the museums and places like that.
Okay. Name some of the museums you've been to.
Actually,
Museum of Natural History.
Yeah.
Where else have we been?
I
The Met.
like going to my grandma's house.
Okay. Well, that's important too, huh? Well, when I visit New York, I like to go to the Metropolitan Museum. Have you been there before?
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you seen one of my favorite places?
I
Is
don't
the,
remember.
yeah, it's the Temple of Dendur is one of my favorite places in that museum. Yeah. Plus the fashion part. My wife's into fashion, so she likes to go to the Fashion Institute. So anyway, what's one thing you've enjoyed doing since you came to Yakima? What was a new thing to get used to?
A bigger house.
A bigger house. That's true. You can get a lot more house in Yakima than you can in New
With
York, can't you?
stairs.
Yes.
Yeah.
We lived in a tiny 3-bedroom apartment in New York City.
Yeah, I know. Apartments are expensive in New York. Yeah. Well, I'm welcome to Yakima, and I'm glad you're here. And as a former, my life in school started at McKinley School many, many years ago. So I'm not always enjoy seeing students from McKinley. So welcome to Yakima.
Thank you.
Thank you, Norm. Mr. Beckett.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for being here with us tonight, for logging on and helping us with the Pledge of Allegiance. And I really just want to welcome you to our community. And of course, and I want to say good luck. Have a great year. Work hard. Make us proud, because we are very, very proud of you and everything you do in your daily lives and your schoolwork. So we thank you for being here. Have a good year, okay?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beckett. And just to round out the board, I want to again express my appreciation to you. We are so pleased to have you in our district and that your mom chose McKinley to teach at, and that you are a proud McKinley Maverick and a Franklin Quaker. Is
Yes.
that right? That was my test for the day to see if I can remember the school mascots. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here with us. You're welcome to stay if you'd like to. We have quite a bit of business to take care of this afternoon, but we completely understand if there are other things that are tugging at you and you need to leave. So thank you so much for being with us today. We wish you the best of luck in this year and in years to come as you continue to be proud students of the Yakima School District.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, girls.
Bye.
Well, that was fun. Next, we have the Yakima Land Acknowledgement and Ryan Beckett. Could you read the land acknowledgement for us today, please?
Yes, President Rice. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Today, the schools of the Yakima School District rest on the ancestral lands of the 14 confederated tribes and bands of the Yakima Nation. The people of Yakima Nation inhabited more than 12 million acres across Adams, Benton, Chelan, Douglas, Franklin, Grant, Kittitas, Klickitat, and Yakima counties. Today, we honor those Native peoples who are tied to the land through history, legends, and culture. We acknowledge their descendants who live in the world today. We thank the caretakers of this land who have lived here and continue to live here since time immemorial. An acknowledgement is a simple, powerful way to show respect and a step towards correcting the stories and practices that erase Indigenous peoples' history and culture. It also honors the truth. As a school district, we will continue to build upon our relationships with the Yakima Nation.
Thank you, Ryan. The board takes turns reading land acknowledgements at our meetings. So every week, a different board member will read the land acknowledgement so that we have an opportunity to share that information with our community. Next item on the agenda is a study session topic, report of the month on leadership and strategic planning. Dr. Green, are you going to lead into this, or are we going directly to Dr. Onsing?
Actually, I will ask Dr. Rodriguez to introduce her team, and it's so nice to have a phenomenal new group of individuals who have joined us here in the Yakima School District, and we're so grateful to have Pam here as well as the lone holdout that remained with this team. So without further ado, I'll turn over the intro to Jenny.
Thank you, Superintendent Green. It is my pleasure this evening to introduce our principal support team. Dr. Pam Onsing, Kathy Page, and Dr. Charlotte Ellis are here to report about principal instructional leadership and the work that we have been doing in the teaching and learning department to really shift our focus to the instructional leaders. And I just know they're going to do a great job. Encourage you to ask them any questions that you have about the work that they are doing. And, you know, our principals are critical leaders in our district, and we truly value the work they do. That's why we have put together an entire principal support team this year to make sure that they are getting the support that they need to do the job that is the most important in our principal leadership. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my team.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Board President Rice, Superintendent Green, and distinguished board members. Thank you for inviting us, the principal support team, to share with you the work we are engaging in to support the instructional leadership and growth of our building leaders. I am Charlotte Ellis, Executive Director of 612 School Leadership and Accountability, and here to present with me this afternoon are two of my amazing team members, Kathy Page, Executive Director of Pre-K 5 School Leadership and Accountability, and Dr. Pam Onsing, Executive Director of Elementary and Secondary Improvement. The intent of our time together is to provide a broad brushstroke of the complex work of supporting our principals to grow as instructional leaders. Our work is based on the leading research in the field by Dr. Meredith Honing and Dr. Lydia Rainey from the University of Washington. The leadership moves we will be sharing with you this afternoon support the growth of our principals to ensure that they have the instructional skills and knowledge needed to support our teachers, so they in turn can provide high quality teaching and learning for all Yakima students. As part of our opening this afternoon, we would like to acknowledge the leadership of Superintendent Green, Dr. Jana Rodriguez, and the other cabinet members. Under their leadership and vision, the principal support team was developed. They understand the importance of the principal's role, the unique position of the building leader, and they have put into place specific supports to honor the complex work of principaling. This leadership move is part of a larger central office transformation centered on achieving the district strategic goals and ensuring that all Yakima School District students experience an equitable and inclusive education. I speak for us all that we are truly humbled and honored to be charged with leading the work with our principals on behalf of the district. Now that we've set our purpose for our time together, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Pam Onsing, who will provide additional insight on the work of the principal support team.
Thank you. All right. As a principal support team, we want to maximize our time and effectiveness in support of leading the growth of our principals' instructional leadership through intentional leadership moves and making sure that every building is focused on specific district strategic plan goals that live within their school improvement plans. Our partnership with the University of Washington District Leadership Design Lab is helping us improve our supervision practices. At the very foundational level, we are part of renovating the TNL department so that we can focus wholly on supporting principals as instructional leaders. Next slide. So you might be wondering, why principal support? Why should we be focusing on principal leadership support? I'll draw your attention to the top 3 bullets, where we learn that principal leadership is second only to teacher quality in influencing student success. And ensuring principals are instructional leaders is critical work for the entire district. Principals need support and development to sustain themselves in the job, as we know that principal retention positively impacts student achievement. Research indicates the critical role that principals play in school improvement. In a meta-analysis of over 2,800 schools by Marzano, Walters, and McNulty, he demonstrates a relationship between principal leadership and student achievement at all levels from elementary through high school. Additionally, significant research has been conducted at the University of Washington on how work at the district office positively impacts student achievement. So we know that an intentional and strong focus on supporting principals' instructional leadership is a necessary and pivotal area of work for our district staff. The work that we are doing in T&L and on the principal support team is because we understand the importance of principal leadership and its role in positively impacting student achievement and school improvement. You're one slide ahead of me, Barb. We're almost there though. Thank you. Having been, all three of us have been building principals ourselves, we understand the value and the impact of the principal role on student well-being and academic achievement, and how important it is to support and retain effective principals in our district. As the article in the PowerPoint, The Revolving Door of the Principalship, indicates, keeping principal turnover rates low and retaining effective principals for at least 5 years is really critical to school improvement. Next slide. We've learned that principal retention is an important factor in school improvement, and so this fall we conducted our own internal audit to investigate principal retention in the Yakima School District for both the 3-year and the 5-year turnover rates going clear back to 2011. So in this slide, you see the top table shows the 3-year turnover rates, 2018 to 21, 15 to 18, and 12 to 15, and those are broken down in elementary, middle, and high school, as well as the 5-year turnover rates going back to 2011. So 2016 to 2021 and 2011 to 2016, also broken down in elementary, middle, and high school numbers. The audit includes building principals only who either resigned or retired from their position with the Yakima School District. So these numbers show that we have strong principal retention at the middle level. However, principal turnover is increasing over time at the elementary level, and this will be a focus for our team moving forward. Next slide.
So now that we've covered the what and the why, we'd like to share with you the how. How do we provide principal supervision? It's important to acknowledge that the shift in thinking and the approach that we are taking when we're working with our principals. In the past, we have had principal supervisors, but the how we engage and what we engage in are different than in the previous years. We are shifting away from focusing on traditional operational issues and engaging with our principals as thought partners and instructional leaders. Part of that process is identifying the conditions that are taking away from instructional leadership and supporting other systems to problem solve and remove those barriers within the organization. We have weekly and bi-weekly one-on-one meetings with the building principals where we work through identified problems of practice. We look for ways that we can embed their learning into their daily work and broker connections and build communities of practice among the principals through our principal cadre meetings. We also acknowledge that every principal is on a different place on their own instructional leadership continuum. We work with a growth mindset and look to grow each individual principal as they develop as instructional leaders. A key leadership move we also engage in is modeling our own learning. Kathy, my roommate here, and I are engaging in a professional growth planning model with our direct supervisor, Dr. Jenny Rodriguez. And as we work through this process with her, we are taking those lessons and translating them into teachable moments with our principals. We also serve as the voice from the field for the teaching and learning department and at the executive leadership level. We share feedback about current practices and realities happening within the buildings. And throughout the process, we support, we listen, we problem solve, and we celebrate. You can go.
During the months of July and August, I conducted a listening tour, which was a series of one-on-one open-ended interviews of our building leaders at their sites. The meetings were designed to understand the journey of each building leader and to gather possible opportunities for growth. What surfaced from these meetings was invaluable, as it has helped us to develop the beginning of a roadmap to support our building leaders and to build their capacity for instructional leadership. The top concern, the most common concern by our building leaders that surfaced was communication. There was a general feeling of inconsistency in messaging and efficiency of communication methods that resulted in a large volume of emails and meetings that were taking the precious time from principals. The second most common topic that surfaced involved our instructional frameworks, specifically the Danielson Framework for Teaching. This framework is what is utilized to evaluate our instructional staff. Building leaders called out the need for training to calibrate with other building leaders. I would add that for our district, we are truly fortunate as we have Jamie Lee, our McClure principal, who is a state certified trainer for the Danielson Framework. We have our very own resident expert. And after learning about the need for training and the fact that we have Jamie Lee in district, we are already making plans to address this particular concern. The third item that surfaced was the need to address social emotional learning with our students in daily schedules. Our building leaders have found themselves responding to the needs of students, but also of their staff, and are searching for additional guidance. In response to the listening tour, specifically speaking to that top concern of communication, an action has been taken. Communication specific to our building leaders is now provided every Friday in the form of a newsletter. The principal page that you see on the left funnels communication to one document, with directors sending their need-to-know information for building principals to me for it to be included in the Friday publication. This has increased efficiency for our busy building leaders, and it also provides the necessary information, only that information is filtered through the building leader lens. This helps our leaders take action more quickly, and additionally, building leaders use the information to communicate in their own buildings, ensuring key district initiatives are messaged out. The publication also provides a place to celebrate and to share successes with each other. In addition to the principal page, we also have a twice monthly teaching and learning newsletter, which you see on the right. It focuses on academic and social emotional behavior learning, which provides updates to principals, as well as teachers, paraeducators, and school staff. As you recall, the third item addressed by the building leaders was the need for information on social emotional learning. This teaching and learning newsletter has responded to this need. You can see by the numbers how many people have viewed the two documents. On the left, you see 101. It represents our building leaders, the intended audience for the publication. And look on the right, 14,501 represents an entire district accessing the teaching and learning newsletter. We have already heard Dr. Onsing on the importance of the retention of our building leaders. The resource articles she shared with you on that slide address also the importance of job satisfaction and employee wellness as key components. During our principal cadre sessions in October this year, we conducted a needs assessment around training for our building leaders, as well as a survey of leader wellness. Leading in a pandemic is extremely challenging, and you can see in the data here that feelings of stress and being overwhelmed is common. However, we also see principals feeling safe, supported, and hopeful. We appreciate their leadership during this challenging time, and we are constantly looking for ways to recognize their efforts, as well as reinforce positive instructional leadership behaviors.
Thank you, Kathy. Embedded into the work we do with the principals is accountability measures. And this is done through the Association of Washington School Principals Leadership Framework. We can all acknowledge that there is no framework that can fully embrace the complex role of the school principal. However, this framework is pretty encompassing. The framework is focused on growth of the principal in 8 specific areas. The rubric language supports one-on-one conversations that we have with our site leaders and that principals engage with among their colleagues. The framework is in its 3rd version and has very clear rubric language and expectations for measurement of equitable practices, evidence of impact on student learning, and woven throughout is an ongoing focus on growth of the leader. Next slide, Mrs. Anderson. Thank you. As we have highlighted throughout the presentation, the work of the building leader is interwoven into many areas within the educational setting. The principalship is critical to the success of the entire educational system, and it's unique to other roles in education. As the principal manages both adults in the system and students in the system simultaneously. This graphic, the school leader paradigm, represents how principaling is the art of leadership where you are constantly becoming while you're doing. An effective leader reflects on what makes them an impact player. Also highlighted in the middle of the paradigm are the 8 criterion that comprise the AWSP framework. Next slide. Woo, it's a busy one. We wanted to share this with you just to showcase that the 8 criterion are further broken down into specific components, which we again work with our principals during our one-on-one meetings. This graphic is again not easy to read here on the screen, but it does give you some insight to the many layers of accountability that are in place for our school leaders.
As Charlotte just indicated, the Association of Washington School Principals Framework provides accountability for building leaders. We also provide accountability to our instructional leaders in 3 additional ways. First, there's an accountability that surfaces in the alignment of the student growth goals that are found within their evaluations, and then how they relate to the building's school improvement plans. The second way that accountability surfaces is how the school improvement plans are directly related to the district strategic improvement plan. And finally, the accountability is also addressed through the frequent conversations that Dr. Ellis mentioned that take place in support of the implementation of the school improvement plans and achievement of the growth goals. As we continue our work this year and look at our next steps, we will be focusing on the following. First, we are piloting an instructional learning plan model, which will move us from a compliance-based approach to a learning stance approach. This approach will build the capacity of our leaders through intentional, individualized learning plans to impact teaching and learning. We know that by investing time and training with our leaders, it will only benefit our educators, our students, and our community. Next, we will provide training and development aligned to district goals and individual leader training needs. And finally, as the principal support team, we will continue to advocate for central services to continue on the district's mission to restructure in order to align the principal supervisor role to increased instructional leadership support. So on behalf of the principal support team, I want to thank you for allowing us to share our work with you this evening. We are happy to answer any questions you might have at this time.
Any questions or comments from board members?
Just a couple comments. One, I'm excited to see this kind of support for our principals. I don't think we've ever had anything like this before to this level of organization and planning, and I hope that it results in a lot of retaining of our principals and not losing them and not burning them out. I had one question: is the AWSP standards, are those aligned with the state standards that principals have to have for their certification? So that if they're, when they're looking at recertification, are they looking at the same kinds of skill set and rubrics?
Yeah. I'm sorry, we're all in the same office, so we're trying not to give you like the feedback moment. But the answer is yes. The AWSP framework is the state criterion for renewal of certificates and the approved or adopted evaluation tool.
Thank you. That makes things much simpler for them too.
Thank you, Norm. Any other comments or questions?
I just wanted to ditto what Norm said. This is exciting to hear, right? Somebody has a systems thinking mind, and when I hear that, and I love that. So I really love the approach to organizational change. And for me, I'm seeing it fall in line with the board leadership model, which is servant leadership, right? You're providing supports to, giving everything the principals need in order for them to be successful. And if they have some areas that need to develop, then you're helping them from a strengths-based perspective. So I really love all the terminology you were using and the team was using. So really great stuff. Looking at transformation, right, of systems and procedures, even transformation of the central office. I kind of heard there, I'm kind of digging, I kind of heard that as well, because that the central office is going to change as well, the way they do business and support. So just really excited to hear the direction that you're moving towards and in regards to supporting our educational leaders. So great stuff. Keep up the good work, and you're to be commended for this new and innovative way of leading and improving, right, the academic achievement of our students. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Raymond. Any other comments or questions from the board?
No questions. I just want to say thank you very much for the information and for the presentation. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Ryan. And I want to extend my appreciation as well. The intentional way that you're going about supporting our educational leaders in the buildings is to be applauded. We know that the last 20 or 22 months have probably been the most challenging of anyone's career in education, as we pivoted on a dime and went to remote learning and adjusted to that. And then, we thought, well, certainly this will be over in a couple of months. And here we are almost 2 years later. And while we are not in virtual mode anymore, there are still a lot of challenges that our principals and our teaching staff and our students are facing. And I know it hasn't been easy, and the intentional approach that you all are taking to supporting our principals and our building leaders is going to make a big difference for them. So thank you so much for all of your work in this area, and thank you for the very informative presentation. I look forward to digging into it a little bit more. Thank you. Jenny, do you want to close this out?
I just want to say thank you to the board for the recognition of how important this work is, that we really are investing in supporting the instructional leadership of our principals. And I want to thank our teaching and learning team. I think they did a phenomenal job this evening. So thank you, ladies, for representing the work so well tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Dr. Green, do you have any closing thoughts on this agenda item?
I'm just so thrilled for our team. I can't think of a better group to come and guide and lead and walk alongside our principals. So to have Dr. Ellis, Dr. Onsink, and soon to be Dr. Page I know that she's working on her doctorate as well, is just phenomenal. I feel completely blessed, and I know that our principals feel the same way as well. There's a buzz of excitement about the connection that this team brings, and I'm sure that we'll see the fruits of their labor for years to come. I think the only thing that I would just call to the attention of the board was the statement that was shared by Dr. Ellis, which is the impact of a principal in a building or to a building. You can have a good building with a good principal, but you'll never have a great building with a good principal. You have to have a great principal. So investing in that leadership is paramount because it means that our students are growing and learning in ways that they wouldn't otherwise. So it's directly related to student outcomes and student progress. Thank you, team.
Thank you, Dr. Green. Thank you, Jenny and team, for being with us this afternoon. You're more than welcome to stay, but we completely understand if you have things that are tapping you on the shoulder and saying, pay attention to me. So we won't be offended if you feel the need to sign off. Thank you so much for being here this afternoon. Next item on our agenda are reports from members of the board. Are there any board members who wish to bring anything to the attention of the rest of the board? I did have a question last week as to why the board is still meeting in virtual mode. And I shared that we had been in, our business meetings had been in in-person mode during the summer and very early fall. But then the COVID numbers started to ramp up pretty significantly. And we were conducting our business meetings in the Eisenhower Auditorium, which is the largest facility we have in the district and provides for adequate social distancing within that facility. But as the numbers began to spike, the board had a discussion about whether or not to move into virtual meetings or not. At that same time, the city council had decided to move their meetings to virtual for probably much the same reason that we did in the increasing COVID case counts. And for us, the fact that we were in the auditorium at Eisenhower, which is a large building, a large room, and custodial staff was having to clean and sanitize the room before we got there and then do it again after we left. And the board had a discussion about if that was the best use of custodial time. And we came down on the side that we wanted to make sure that the custodial staff had sufficient time in their schedule to make sure that classrooms and common areas used by students and staff were cleaned and sanitized, and in an effort to keep both our students and our staff safe. And at that time, we then opted to go to virtual meetings, especially for our business meetings. We've been in virtual mode for our Monday meetings since March of 2020. We've also been able to, because we're in virtual mode, been able to live stream as well as record all of our meetings. And I personally, I think that that's probably allowed for an increasing level of access for many of our community members, where they're not required to come to a meeting at a particular time and sit for a couple of hours and then leave. They can instead choose to view the recorded meetings at their leisure when it's convenient for them to do so. So all that being said, we're watching our COVID case counts very closely. Depending on what happens with all of the holiday gatherings for Thanksgiving or the December holidays, we, in all likelihood, will revisit this discussion at our retreat in January, and we should have enough time by then to evaluate the ramifications of the holiday gatherings and what that's done to our case count, and see whether or not we think that it would be safe to go back to in-person meetings. My fear is that we not put ourselves in a position where we have to almost make a weekly decision as to, we're meeting virtually next week and then the week after we're not. And I think that's just confusing for everybody. And I want to be able to provide some consistency to not only to the board and the staff, but also to the community so that they know or are able to find us when they need to find us and view our meetings. So if there are no questions or comments about this, Ryan?
May I, President Rice?
Absolutely.
Thank you for the background. I know there's been a roller coaster over the last almost 2 years as far as all of these considerations are brought up and met. And I understand that the district has been cautious. And I brought this up the other day because I guess I am perplexed for 2 reasons. Number one, it feels awkward to me that the board would be meeting virtually when we're, wanting our staff and students to be in person, which is important. I also feel like there's a double standard that comes up when it comes to public health guidance. And if we're relying on public health guidance for reducing our in-person activity, we should also be aware of public health guidance when we are opened up. And unless I am wrong, there is no restriction on a public entity like our board meeting in person right now. The last thing I would say is that I know it's convenient for some people to be online and to meet like this. But I also would tell you that for a lot of people in our community, gaining access to a board meeting like this is not convenient and it is intimidating. And so even though it may be less convenient for us to be in person, whether we're in the the theater at Eisenhower or any other room, I think it's important that our board represent an adherence to public health guidance, and we show that support for our community to be able to access us as they have questions or comments. Those are just random thoughts from a new board member for consideration down the road. So thank you.
Thank you, Ryan, for your input. Like I said, we will revisit this at our retreat in January. Between now and then, there's only one other meeting, and that's the business meeting next week. So I would like to suggest that we kind of hold off on making any decisions about this until we have the full board in attendance at the retreat, where we can kind of discuss this more in depth. But thank you for your input, and we'll certainly take that under consideration during our conversation in January. Okay, anything else from members of the board?
I just had a question. I think, and I'm not sure if you made mention of this, but I thought the board's discussion was around the amount of effort that custodians or people who would have to set up the meeting setting, right? Whether it's at central office. Did you make mention of that?
I thought I did, but it could have been. I only mentioned it in my head. I'm not sure.
Okay, I just want to bring that out as well, that the board had thought that because of the amount of effort, labor, or whatever, that it was better to remain online. But I don't know if that's still, if cost or that amount of labor or effort involved, if that's still an issue for the board or not. So, but yeah, I had, that's something I had also had mentioned a while back is if we're expecting students and staff to go into the classroom, then it would be better if the board was also following the same procedure. So I just wanted to bring that to the table.
Thanks, Raymond. We'll follow up on this conversation at the retreat where we can spend a little more time and go a little more in depth on it. Okay. All right. Anything else from members of the board? Okay. Next on the agenda is the superintendent's update. Dr. Green.
Thank you, President Rice. I'm sure that everybody is curious to know the December character word of the month. And it actually is curious, which is marked by a desire to investigate and learn. In Spanish, curioso, marcado por el deseo de investigar y aprender. The trait is critical thinker and problem solver, característica, pensador crítico y solucionador de problemas. So it'll be interesting to see how this has worked into our presentations this evening. Hopefully we won't go overboard. Moving forward in the superintendent's update, we will go directly to the COVID report with YSD statistics by Assistant Superintendent Stacy Locke, followed by the COVID-19 report with Yakima County statistics by Jewel Brumley. And then I will conclude with one more recent share out. So without any more delay, Stacy, time is yours.
Thank you, Superintendent Green. Barb will pop this baby up here in a second. Thank you, Barb. We can continue to the next slide. Thank you. So instead of having a 2-week review, we knew with Thanksgiving break thrown in there, it would really skew our numbers. So this information is from last Friday, Saturday to December 3rd, which was this Friday. And as you can see, we're kind of holding our own here at 6.4, the largest population at Barge Lincoln, percent of students in quarantine. And as I think we noted last week, that we have reached, we're below 300 per 100,000 as far as a caseload. And so we have now adjusted our COVID protocols to match the Department of Health, in which students who are vaccinated and close contacts can now attend school. Prior to, those students were still in quarantine, as well as any student with any symptom was quarantined. Now it is back into the symptom A and symptom B number of symptoms, which one, and then based on additional information, the amount of quarantine days is set. It is much more complicated than our previous system, but it also will allow more students to attend school moving forward. As far as our static site in testing, we report over the last week 477. The team just told me today that we're getting close to almost 600, providing at that one site at Central Services, 600 tests per week. And so over last week, we had a 5.45% positivity rate, which was a decrease of almost 1% from the week prior before. When we look at the number of students quarantined, we see that elementary is still at least twice as much as the rest of them. And one of the questions I know that was asked last week, and so when we met with the health department, they did some digging and found out that based on data through 11/30, which would have been last Tuesday, as far as vaccination work for 5 to 11-year-olds, 6% had initiated the vaccine, which would be 1,786 kids, and 0.3% had actually completed the vaccine series, or 95 students, and that would be within Yakima County. So those numbers at that point in time, as of Tuesday last week, are not extremely significant. But in a minute, I'll show you how many vaccine clinics we do have up and running here in the next couple of weeks. And I think we'll see those numbers rise significantly. Next slide. So we are offering flu shots, first and second, as well as booster shots, and it's open to the entire community at LC tonight, Washington tonight, Adams, Barge, Lincoln, and Davis here in the next couple weeks. And then on December 13th, and because of an early release Monday, we're offering to Yakima staff and their families, we're open from 1:30 to 6 p.m. in Central Services Room A, again for flu shots, first and second COVID and booster shots. There's a little asterisk next to Adams. And so I'd like you to see that in this next flyer, because this is kind of, what would I want to say? This is a sample, if you go to the next slide, Barb, of our bridging partner work with the new Yakima School District Health Cooperative. And so this particular activity is taking place as a health and wellness fair involving not only our local partners, but also our migrant in ECAP. And so we just wanted to highlight this as an example of the direction the co-op will be going in the near future as one of the activities that we will be providing. This is a big deal. It's been advertised all over the place, and we're very excited that it is looked at as a health resource fair as opposed to just a vaccination site with what is going to take place and what is happening. So we're very excited to be a sponsor and work with our collaborative partners on this particular activity. Any questions I can answer for anyone moving forward?
Questions for Stacy? Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you, President Rice.
Jewel?
Yes. They just updated the numbers for the weekend, like while Stacy was talking. So I don't have all of those updated, but I did update the weekly amount per 100,000 just while she was talking. So we spiked last week with 101 new cases in the county on the 2nd, but then we're down to 64. And over the weekend for all 3 days, we had 102. So that averages about 33, 34 new cases each day on the weekend. So that's not too bad. The 14-day rate per 100,000, I just updated, but it's 252. So we went up a little bit from Thanksgiving break, but not a significant amount. For that, I have not updated the 7-day rate because I just got that data. So I suspect that will, might end up being 111, for this last week, based on the cases we had. This is up to date as of December 3rd. These always lag a little. So in December, we've had 0 cases of vaccinated people, breakthrough cases, and 56 of unvaccinated people in the county. Our zip code rates for the month of November, they don't update these until Monday night or Tuesday morning, but they've gone down with the exception of the little spike we had last week in 98901. Hospitalizations have went up, climbed a little last week, but then have come back down. Let me check my phone here real quick. We currently have 24, so that's approximately where we were at before. So it's a little bit up, but only by 1 person. Hospitalization by vaccination status, again, no one has been in the hospital in December who was vaccinated, but we have 5 people that in December went into the hospital that are unvaccinated. And those are the total numbers for November. So this is as of December 3rd, again, the rates of deaths in the county based on vaccination status. Again, one person who was vaccinated died in December so far, and 2 unvaccinated people. Hospitalization by age, again, very few. We've only had 5 people, so most of them in the 65 to 79 age bracket. Student total cases over the week going to November 30th, 38 new students, 7 new staff. And school age data, again, going down in all areas, so that's a good rate to go down. Our total population, again, that includes all age groups. We have 58.4% vaccinated or starting the vaccine series. And 12 and up, we're at 73.1%. Fully vaccinated, 52.2%. And 12 and up, 65.4%. And then I added a slide that Stacy just talked about, 5 to 11-year-old vaccinations. So those are not in a chart because they're pretty small, but we are getting there. So hopefully that will continue to go up. And then the forecast, I extended it out to the end of December, keeping us approximately the same, going up a little for the Thanksgiving bump. But then I suspect that January, our numbers will go up after the holidays at the end of December and New Year's Eve. And so January, I expect us to bump up a little. And I figure, just estimating, by the 3rd week of January, we should be pretty steady again, but we'll have a spike the first 2 weeks of January. I predict that. Anybody have any questions?
Any questions for Jewel?
I will get those updated, and then Barb can reload them as soon as I get on updating from what they just sent out.
Thank you, Jules. Thank you, Stacy. It's important for us to keep on top of this data, so we appreciate all of your work in this area.
Thank you, President Rice. Thank you, Stacy and Jewel. A little bit behind the scenes every week during our meetings. I'm fielding texts from Jewel to get her the latest updates because they usually come out around 4:30, and today we didn't go quite long enough. So thank you, Jewel, for always being able to think quickly on your feet and adapt on the fly. It's been very helpful. And any delay this time was on us for not having a longer program before you presented. With that, the last item I'd share with the board is just a very quick celebration, recognizing first and foremost that we have wonderful things to celebrate all over our district. It would be really disingenuous to single out what is happening in one building over another, because we have so many great staff members who are reaching out, especially at this time of the year, leadership as well. Looking from a district perspective, however, I would just share with the board that we are continuing to engage in a very wonderful partnership with the Ray Foundation, which is the giving arm of the Seattle Sounders Football Club. And we met today with their representatives as well as members from a foundation called EarthGen. And we are moving forward in planning for 2 mini pitch fields at Barge Lincoln. And the involvement of EarthGen as a partner to Seattle FC is that they actually come in with the Seattle Sounders and complement the mini pitch and what it does for a community space. So EarthGen will be coming in and working with our students to design a community space that will be located on the site of Barge Lincoln that will allow for anything from an outdoor classroom to a walking path, a way to engage our students and to make the space much more valuable, not only to the students, but also potentially to the community when they come to watch games and participate in events that are happening at that site. If you have not been to Barge Lincoln recently, there's been quite a transformation with the upgrade of playground equipment as well as the painting of the facility. And I think over the next year, you will see quite a wonderful addition to the back end and the field area. Also, I failed to mention that trees have been planted around the outside of the field area, which will fill in nicely for the community as well. So it's been a great addition, and some wonderful things are happening, supported by the district there as well as other locations. With that, are there any questions about the Seattle FC partnership and EarthGen partnership that I could address at this time?
Questions from board members?
Hearing none, I'll conclude my update and pass this back to you, President Rice. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Green. Next item on our agenda is the fiscal year end report for the 2020-2021 school year. Becky, are you kicking this off, or Dr. Green, do you want to lead in?
Well, we will actually both engage in this process together. So it's wonderful to be able to present with a wonderful partner in crime here, so to speak. I should not say crime when talking about finances, however. So forget that. Thank you, Becky, for your wonderful preparation and that of your team on the 2020-21 financial year end report. I will ask for you to lead in, and then I will hopefully be able to contribute here near the end of the presentation. Becky?
Thank you, Superintendent Green. President Rice, members of the board, this is the first slide here is the overview of all of our funds. So I will start in the first column there with the general fund. As a reminder, this is the fund that we do all of our district operations in. So we had a beginning fund balance at 9/1 of 20 of 28 million. We brought in total revenues of 243.8 million. We had total expenditures of 240.7 million. We did the transfer to other funds, and this is in the amount of 656,000 for debt services. This is to service our non-voted debt, giving us excess revenues of 2.4 million with an ending fund balance at 8/31 of 30.4 million. Going to the next column is the Associated Student Body Fund. This is the student fund. This is for student fundraisers and expenditures. They had a beginning fund balance of 644,000, brought in 124,000 in revenues and 163,000 in expenditures. We had 38,000 over in expenditures, leaving the ending fund balance at 605,000. The next fund is Debt Services Fund. This is where we service our debt, pay our principal and interest in our long-term bonds. We had a beginning fund balance of 13.5 million. The total revenues and total expenditures are higher than normal due to the bond refundings that we did throughout this year. And so we had total revenue showing at 25.1 and expenditures at 23.9 million. The net revenue to the fund was 1.2 million with an ending fund balance of 14.7. You may be curious why we have a fund balance so high in that fund, and that is because we have that sinking fund long-term debt that we will be paying off in 2025, and that is a total of 17.5 million. So we are building that fund balance to pay that off. Capital Projects Fund, we started the year with 3.8 million. Have total revenues of 1.1 million, and that was due to the settlement. Total expenditures of $8,000, and that was the beginning of the Davis Auditorium. And we have total revenues over expenditures of 1.1 million with an ending fund balance at 4.9. What I want you to know about this fund is YV Tech. You can see the statement at the bottom, owns $1.1 million of those funds because of the building sale several years ago. So those funds are still in there. So the district amount available in capital projects fund is 3.8 million, which we've set aside for the Davis Auditorium. Transportation Vehicle Fund. Transportation Vehicle Fund. We have a beginning fund balance of 1.2 million. The revenue that we brought in was 515,000. That's due to bus depreciation. That's the revenue we get from the state of Washington. So we have revenue. There were no expenditures. The buses that we put on order at the end of last year due to COVID were delayed in getting here. So we have received, I believe, a few of the buses, and the additional ones are en route. So that ending fund balance of 1.7 million is dedicated for the purchase of those buses. Next slide. This is a general fund revenue comparison between 2019-20 and 2020-21. The main categories for revenue are maintenance and operations levy. Between 1920 and 2021, we have an increase of $3 million. Thanks to this is the first year of our new levy. The LEA and other local, we had a slight decrease in that for between 18.4 million and 18 million. And as a reminder, the LEA money declines as our own local levy increases. The state general special, which is the big piece of our revenue, the big piece of the pie there, we received 179 million in 1920 and 177.9 million in 2021. This is due to the decline in enrollment between the years. Our federal general special at 22.7 versus 20.4 million. And that is due to a decline in use of Title I and in receiving our food service revenue. We switched to the summer feeding program, which has a lower rate of reimbursement. The federal ESSER increased from 2.9 million up to 12.8 million. And that's across all federal ESSER money that we received. So we had an increase of about 9.2 million in revenues for the year. This is a general fund expenditure comparison by type of expenditure. So it starts with the certificated salaries. You can see that we've had an increase in cert salaries from 100 million up to 106. Mainly this is due to the hiring for certs in the ESSER category, as well as a K3 class size reduction increase of hiring certificated staff. Classified salaries decreased. You can see the numbers there, 37 million to 35 million. During the COVID year, we didn't have as many subs. We didn't have overtime. And some of those positions are special ed that rather than being hired, they revert to purchase services. You'll see an increase in the purchase services. Employee benefits are up, mainly due to the SEB insurance conversion that we went through as a state. Supplies and materials being down slightly. due to we were in virtual learning and we didn't utilize as many supplies while we were in the virtual learning. And the purchase services, travel is pretty much non-existent due to COVID. And then the capital outlay, you can see the increase there from to 1.7 million. That was for Project Gemini, the internet access infrastructure. So I put this slide in here as a reminder, since this is the final stage of the pandemic costs. This slide came about starting in March 2020, and this goes through August 31, 2021. The focus of our ESSER 1 federal funds was to support the pandemic costs. So the different categories, the PPE, the health monitoring, the cleaning, disinfecting protocols, we spent a total of $763,000. Staff costs for essential workers and district reopening was $3.1 million. The cost for distance learning, the student laptops and hotspots and the meals, $6.8 million. And then we ran the first responder child care at Discovery Lab for $125,000. So this, again, this crosses fiscal years, but I think it's important for us to remember and remind ourselves what our pandemic costs were starting in March of 2020 through the end of 2021. So the next slide is going to show you the different revenue categories that supported that $10.8 million in pandemic costs. So if you start at the top, the federal CARES and ESSER at $5.8 million. We had a FEMA grant of $157,000. We also received a GEAR grant from the Governor's Emergency Education Relief of $1.2 million to support student laptops. We had a K-12 internet access grant for $201,000. We got local revenues from Yakima Schools Foundation supported us at $196,000. We got Invest Ed funds for COVID-19 and then the All-In Washington Digital Equity. We also utilized some funds from our own state programs, LAP, Bilingual, and CTE of $1.5 million. We used some Title I migrant and IDEA at $491,000, nutrition services at $1.1 million, and transportation at $29,000. Again, this was the pandemic costs. If we go to the next slide, we'll show our ESSER 2 spend to safely reopen our schools and support learning recovery, which we did begin utilizing these funds in the year 2020-21. This is the 10-point framework and our expenditures as of 8/31/21. That very top line shows the amount available at $22.6 million. As of 8/31, we spent $7.1 million with a balance of $15.5 million going into 2021-22. And you can see the different categories from the 10-point framework that we spent in. Okay, and the next slide. So this is a summary of the fund balance, the $30.4 million, and I want to explain how that amount is derived. So we have a non-spendable amount of $444,000. That represents the food inventory that was on hand at the end of the fiscal year, the value of that food inventory. And we move into restricted for carryover of state program revenues. That's our carryover for LAP and state PD dollars and any other state program revenues. And that's a total of $3 million. Then we have our restricted for Skill Center. Skill Center has $3.1 million in their reserves. The restricted for debt service is for our transfers out to debt service for our non-voted debt. Then the restricted for self-insurance at $1 million is we are self-insured for labor and industries. So the total restricted fund balance at $7.9 million. The committed represents our ESD 105 unemployment pool, which we are a member of. And currently there's a $61,000 balance there. The assigned fund balance. Assigned to other capital projects, $4.8 million has been set aside to support the Davis Auditorium project that we're engaging in. And then assigned for other purposes is carryover for things like building budget, local grants, any funds that are assigned for a specific program that we have the funds for, and that's $4.4 million. So our total assigned at $9.3 million. The unassigned, GL 891 there, the unassigned minimum fund balance represents the 5% at $12.7 million, and that's for board policy 1000.2.3. And that totals $30.4 million in our fund balance at the end of the year.
Thank you, Becky. I really appreciate you calling out the revenue sources in one of the previous slides. To know that we have accessed all of the grant funds from the federal and local level and spent all of those funds speaks highly of the work that you and your team engaged in. And thank you for your wonderful preparation this evening. As we look forward at the analysis of the district's fiscal year, we conduct what's called a SWOT analysis: strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and what was the last one? Threats as well. So talking about strengths, you see here that we have 6 bullet points to share with you this evening. The strengths that we see in our budget in the analysis of the fiscal year, our local levy revenue of $3 million, the CARES funding that we received in CARES 1 or ESSER 1, the ESSER funding for number 2 for reopening our schools and the expenditures that have occurred under that guise as well. And then the 4th bullet, you can see the grant funding that we received to support the laptops and internet equipment to make sure that we are entering into this new era, assuring that all of our students have the capability, not only in the form of a computer, but in connectivity as well. We do have the fund balance that was addressed here just in the previous slide by Becky. And then in addition, we've saved at this point taxpayers over 3.1 with the refunding savings over the next 10 years. The weaknesses that Becky has called out in working on this was the enrollment fluctuations. We still see that there is a lot of fluctuation, a lot of change in enrollment. We've been experiencing that. In fact, a recent article by the Seattle Times talked about 35,000 students that are not returning to the traditional public education model. So we're doing what we can to make sure that we're taking that into account. And as the board knows, in the conversation with myself and with Jenny, Dr. Rodriguez this week, we're looking at sustainable revenue sources in what we can do to think creatively about bringing more people to the district. There is a continued gap in the dedicated revenue for special education. The board is well aware that we have as one of our legislative priorities full funding for special education. And this is the reason why, is because of the gap that we continue to see and the high costs that we have as Yakima School District as compared to many other districts in the area. In fact, all other districts in the area. There's also a dependence upon the general fund for large maintenance projects. We do not have at this point, a long-term strategy to share with the board. However, that is pending as we work towards not only a bond strategy, but having maintenance projects occur at a regular interval so that we are not dependent upon the regular fund, the general fund, but we would actually have a maintenance fund dedicated to that and also then accounted for fiscally. The opportunities that exist, ESSER 2, the authorization to supplant and maintain the integrity of district operations. So this is a component that really relies heavily on our fiscal department to make sure that we are taking the resources that we can and not spend those per se in a way that would put us at in danger moving into or out of the ESSER 3 funding era, which concludes in September of 2024. We have to be thinking strategically beyond 2024 and therefore spend the funding that we have available through ESSER to make sure that we have a sustainable plan in place. And then a future capital levy to make sure that we have that opportunity in front of us again to address the weakness of depending on the general fund for maintenance projects. The threats that we see in the future continue to be the enrollment fluctuations, variance with COVID and what that could mean certainly is unpredictable, but also a legislative session that may actually have potential cuts. We know that the legislators are well aware of the ESSER funding that has come forward in the last year, and the fear is that the cuts may come as well in subsequent years. Do you have anything to add that I may have missed, Becky, before we move to questions?
No, you covered those perfectly. Thank you.
All right. Will you take us through the investments, Becky?
Absolutely. So the investments that we're making for 2021-22 in the teaching and learning focus areas, learning recovery, and aligning that to our ESSER template framework. So continuing that work for our students. The mental health supports for our students. We hired additional counselors, nurses, and MTSS staff. We're doing a K-3 class size reduction from 20.11 to 17.5. So when January arrives, we'll be able to test that to ensure that we are meeting that 17.5. The technology to continue with our one-to-one devices for our student laptops. We're going to begin work on the new YSD Health Cooperative. And we're doing a system-wide equity audit, which should enlighten us on the bright spots and key challenges for our district.
All right. Thank you, Becky. And I think with that, we'll go ahead and move to any questions that the board may have.
Yes, I should have put curiosities on that slide instead of questions.
That was a missed opportunity.
It was, wasn't it?
Any comments or questions from board members?
I do have a question in terms of, and you don't have to have the answer. I mean, give me the answer now if we don't have it. What is the average number of dollars per student that we received funds or monies for last year? So that's one. And then, I've been having people ask me about the budget, saying, the school district is receiving more money, our reserves are up, right? And they talk about school districts getting more money and that being a function of academic success, right? But we all know that the pandemic hit and, we're using all the extra monies for what we've been talking about right over the last year or so. So I'm just wondering, can you speak to that? I know that our students come from low income backgrounds. They're often the most hardest hit with COVID infections and, have a lot of different challenges that they are facing with, right? So I don't know if I'm making sense with it, but that's kind of like my thoughts in terms of, what can I tell, when the community, when they come to me and say, the school district is getting more money. Is that a fact? Yeah, it is, but how much more money and what is the impact on students? Is it having that impact that more money should have without a pandemic or I don't know if I'm making sense or not, but if you can kind of
Absolutely.
information about that. Yes.
Sure. And Becky, are you able to give the price per student, the dollar figure that we're, or do you want to hold off on that?
It's over $8,000, Raymond. I can get you an exact figure if you'd like.
It's only 8,000 per student?
No, it's over 8,000.
Oh.
Let me look it up real quick. Well,
all right, so
sure.
I'll just go ahead and answer the second part. And if we don't get that, Becky, we can certainly send that to the board after this meeting. So we certainly want to have an accurate number for you, Director Navarro. As far as your second question, I believe that probably the best way to answer that, maybe to actually go back into the information that was shared this evening. The slide that preceded this one actually talks about the investments that have been made by the district that benefit students and others. So as you look at the last slide, and we won't pull it up, the first was that we have a teaching and learning focus, that we have taken the expenditures that we had seen previously, and any of the extra funding that we did receive has been allocated to each of those categories. So we're making sure that when we receive this additional funding, that we are still spending the same percentage on teaching and learning that we would before. So when we receive greater amount, that greater amount is then going forward into teaching and learning. Part of that actually goes into the mental health supports for students. I remember being in the auditorium, less than a year ago, obviously less than a year ago, but when our YEA president was standing up and talking about we need more counselors. We have already made the moves to hire additional counselors, nurses, and MTSS staff, which does directly benefit our students. So when we're talking about the funding coming in, does it directly benefit students? Do we have things in place that we would not have otherwise? Absolutely. Another example would be the class size reduction funding that is supporting smaller numbers, which we know lead to more individual attention and greater outcomes in working with the teacher and working with students. Also, we've been working, as the board knows, for an announcement on how to address the health needs of our staff, students, and our community beyond the school day. Actually, let me adjust that, of our students and families beyond the school day. So we will have an announcement of a new opportunity that awaits here in the coming weeks as we finalize what would be a YSD Health Cooperative. So those are some examples, I think, Raymond, that we could give right away on how are we benefiting from the additional funding coming forward. And then we're also looking at a modified calendar opportunity that will extend some opportunities for students to learn beyond the 180 days. We don't know what that's going to look like yet, but we will by late January, early February. So again, it's listed on the slide that talks about investments for 2021 and 2022. And I think the other thing that I would just ask for, if people continue to come forward and you need additional support or bullet points, just let me know and we will put those together even beyond what we have this evening in that last slide. Becky, did you come up with a number?
I did. The rate is $8,461 during the 2020-21 school year.
President Rice, may I ask a question?
Absolutely.
I just want to follow up on Director Navarro's question. Is that how much the district is spending per student per year from last year? Did I understand that correctly or incorrectly?
It's the BEA rate that we receive from the state per student.
From the state per student. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments for Becky or Dr. Green?
So I looked up Seattle School District cost per student for last year, and it was $20,000. That's a big difference. Is that so? I think so. The number you gave me, that's just state funds. That doesn't include total funding that the district receives. Right? The federal monies.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't believe that would, so Becky, correct me, but I do not think that does not correct any of our ESSER funds that have come on 1, 2, or 3.
So that's what I was looking at more, because I saw a figure somewhere that it was more like 13,000 and some change. So that's where I'm glad you, Ryan, you brought up that question, because I was wondering about that as well. Seems kind of 8,000 seems kind of low for the amount of money that the district has at or receives from all sources.
Could
resources.
could I ask Barb, could you Barb, could you put up the slide deck again and go to the color-coded slide, the one 2020, 2021 ESSER 2 expenditures to safely reopen? It has the 10-point framework. I think this might help to clarify.
Well, it also seems like we're getting two figures here that don't mean the same thing. The 8,400 is what we receive FTE from the state. The figure you mentioned, Raymond, about Seattle was how much they expend per student. So that's a different figure than what they receive per student. So I think we're comparing apples and oranges here.
Well, that's not what I saw. I saw that's how much they receive per student. So I'm not comparing apples to oranges. I'm just trying to get.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what I saw. Maybe you saw some other data.
What you said was what they spend per student. So that's where I got confused.
Well, maybe what they receive
per student.
Yeah, what they receive per student is
okay.
What I meant to say.
So taking a look again at this ESSER 2 expenditures as of August 31st, 2021, you'll see the 10-point framework in the different categories. Reopening safely, mental health supports, learning gaps. Each of these are categories that directly impact students. And I think to figure out the exact number, Becky, what we would do is, we'd be able to add that to the allocated amount and do some division to get what we're seeing per student. So the point that I would make here is that the money that we receive from from the ESSER funding, the majority of that is going directly into the well-being of students and into the classroom as well. When we look at high quality curriculum and instruction, staying on path to post-secondary, addressing learning gaps. These are not defined beyond the broad brush of what we have listed here, but that money does then factor into what we are spending per student if we break it out that way. Thank you, Barb. So Becky, could we, you and I will meet and come up with a clearly understandable number and how we got to that number so it's transparent?
Yes, and Director Navarro, if you could share whatever you were looking at from Seattle, that would be helpful.
Yes, there's a list. I got to look for it that shows all the districts, how much they received in funds per student. And it ranged from 20 to 2,400, I think. And 13 was about the middle, the medium. So, okay, I can do that.
Thank you.
Any other questions on Becky's year-end report? Thank you, Becky. You've provided us clear and understandable information on a very complex topic, so thank you so much. Next item on the agenda is bond refunding.
Yes, like to introduce Mark. Thank you for being here. Mark Pressing is here this evening with us, and he will present as well with Becky. So I'll turn it over to the two of you.
Great. I'll start off here. Thank you for having us, President Rice, Dr. Green, and members of the board. As a brief introduction for those who haven't seen me on the meetings before, I run the Financial Advisory Services Program for Educational Service District 112. And we serve as a financial advisor for the Yakima School District and many districts throughout the state, and help with managing your bond portfolios, new, kind of long-term facilities management. And one of those roles is to look at outstanding bonds and see if there's an opportunity to refinance those bonds at lower interest rates. The bond world, we call that a refunding. So that's the difference there. So just think refinancing when you hear the word refunding. And we have another opportunity. I noticed some of the strengths from Becky's presentation was the prior refundings that we did of $3.1 million in savings. And we've got another opportunity for a bond issue that's coming up for an eligible refunding this next spring. With the holidays, we want to start it early to make sure we can get in front of the line and get in the market as soon as we can. So Barb, I know we had a brief PowerPoint presentation. If we could put that up, that'd be great. If not, I can talk through it as well. I kind of know the information, I think, off the top of my head. So, and Becky thought it'd be helpful to have a little briefing and opportunity to answer questions before you take action on a resolution at the next board meeting in January. The bond market update, Barb, just move forward. The bottom line is interest rates are still near the historic lows. The uncertainty in the world, whether it be COVID, inflation, supply chain, all of those things lead investors to move to the bond market so they have more certainty in the return of their money. And last week, this municipal bond interest rates, an index that we tracked called the Bond Buyer Index, was at 2.05% last week. It's a weekly index, and the all-time low is 2.02. So this is a great time to be looking at refinancing bond issues. But of course, we won't know what the interest rate is going to be until we are in the market in February. So next slide, Barb, please. We have a lot of goals. We've worked with Becky and her team to identify what we want to do with this. We have, under Washington state law, our hands are tied a little bit for restructuring debt payments, that sort of thing, but we want to make sure that we're managing this opportunity well to help the district going forward, and managing the total district tax rates is kind of the bottom line going forward. We're going to apply for a credit rating again. Superintendent Green does a great job of representing the district on those calls, as well as Becky and her team. And I was actually capturing some of Becky's slides while she is making her presentation to talk to Moody's Investor Service, because they care about things like your fund balance. And kudos to you as a board as well for managing the finances in a way that's financially stable for the district going forward. That really helps in a lot of ways. One of the resolutions you'll be taking up is to participate in the Washington School Bond Guarantee Program. By applying to that program, the state of Washington will make a payment if you miss one. You don't want to miss a payment, but if something happened, the state would make that up. And because of that, you receive the state's AAA credit rating and lower interest rates associated with that as well. And so I think the next slide, we have some projected results based on current market information. I guess I'd highlight just a few things in yellow. The average interest rate on the bonds outstanding is 4%. We go down below, we think we could get a true interest cost, which is your overall borrowing cost, about 1.44% in today's market. For savings over $5 million. Now, this last number is 27.8%. That's those savings divided by the amount of the bonds we're refunding. Our minimum savings target is 3%. I don't think I've ever seen a 27% refunding in my career to save $5 million on $8 million, $18 million of bonds being refinanced. So if we get anywhere near this, it'd be a great result for the district. And I'm confident that we will get really substantial savings. And the next slide, I think, has our schedule of what we're trying to do. So of course, we'll be working over the next month with Becky and her team. I like to think that the board, you like it when I show up because it's good news, but when I show up at Becky's front door, she thinks, okay, here's another 3-month project that she has to manage. And they always make it fun to part of the team, but it is a substantial amount of work from your finance team. And so I want to recognize that as well. So we'd have the resolutions to you, and that'd be Jim McNeil, Foster Garvey, be joining on January 10th for your consideration of the authorization to allow us to move forward with the refunding. We have a call in January with the rating agencies again, as I mentioned, moving towards a financing in February 23rd. The soonest we can close this under IRS tax law is March 1st. We close March 23rd. So we're getting you in the market really as quickly as we can around that March 1st, early deadline, if you will. Again, I'm here to answer any questions you have, of course, but I think we hope this will be some good news for the district in the springtime to start out the calendar year.
Any questions from board members? Well, thank you for being here, Mark. I look forward to the resolution in January, and by then we'll have some better idea, I think, about the numbers that we're looking at for refinancing. So thank you so much for being here today.
You're very welcome, President Rice. And it's always great to be part of the Yakima team. I love working with you guys. It's great.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
Have a wonderful holiday, Mark.
You too. Thank you.
Okay. Next on our agenda is the pre-approval discussion for the monitoring report 1000.1.0 global end statement. Board members might remember that we reviewed this policy the end of November, and let me get to the right form here, for crying out loud. And so now is the time for us to review the results of the survey that's conducted with the board for input on the monitoring report itself. I want to thank the board members that responded. And while we did have 5 board members that responded, we have had a turnover on the board since this monitoring report was presented. So one of our newest board member will have the opportunity to review this time next year. And our board member who went off the board last week is the one that responded in his place. So all 5 board members responded to the survey, and all 5 agreed that the superintendent is either making sufficient progress or meeting the various elements of this particular policy. There were a number of comments that Graciela made, and she and I went over them this afternoon because we knew that she wasn't going to be able to be here today. And so I'm wondering the board's pleasure on this. Do you want to review each one of these comments now? Do you want to review them maybe at the retreat and have a general discussion as to her rationale for providing all the comments that she did, since the board members agreed that the superintendent is either making sufficient progress or meeting the various elements of the policy? What would be your pleasure?
I'm comfortable addressing these at the retreat.
Okay. Raymond?
Yeah, I was trying to review them again. I had forgotten what her main points were. So, because yeah, if we're going to approve this, we probably should hear the comments or discuss her comments first, right? Is what I'm thinking.
Okay.
Yeah, because if we approve it, then the comments may
Okay.
not have as much meaning then.
Okay. Ryan, do you have a preference one way or the other?
My only comment would be that I should probably abstain from the vote, being as that I didn't take part in the review. And since Graciela isn't here this evening, it might put the board in an odd spot numbers wise for a vote. So maybe hanging off to the retreat is the better option.
Okay. So, are you suggesting that we wait until the retreat to approve this policy?
I am not. I am merely pointing out the fact that there would only be 3 members of the board to vote, and I don't know if this is a majority vote or a 2/3 vote. I don't know how this works, President Rice. So I was just pointing that out, that I would feel the need to abstain. I'll leave the particulars to people who know more than I do.
Yeah, it's a majority vote. So we can just briefly review the tenor of the comment, and then at the retreat have a discussion about I'd like her to be able to tell you in her own words why she provided so many comments to this particular policy. Okay. So the first comment is related to mastery of the basics and beyond. And the comment reads, I agree that the superintendent is making sufficient progress. However, I disagree with the interpretation. Quote, we interpret mastery to mean progress toward the standards, end quote. Progress and mastery have two different meanings. So this particular one may warrant a discussion with the whole board and the superintendent in order to kind of get down to an agreed upon interpretation for this particular element of the policy. Is there objection to that? Okay. The next comment has to do with relevance and connections. This one is a little lengthy. 2.1, the student survey data shows increases for all grade levels in self-perception and perception of others and supportive learning environment. However, the parent survey shows a marked decrease in perception of others. The parent survey results may result from the pandemic and the fact that the schools were closed. Many families struggled with caring for their children when schools were closed. 2.2, the district has consistently performed well in this area. I appreciate that 11 or more schools are collaborating with DSHS and DCYF. Many of our students have multiple needs, and coordination of services can be a challenge. Ensuring our students' need for physiological safety, security is paramount for educational success. 2.3, the number of business and faith-based organizations supporting our schools continues to be impressive. The district has community-wide support. An area not mentioned in the monitoring report is the many culturally relevant acknowledgements this year. Holidays that are culturally important to our students were not widely celebrated in the past. This year, I saw many examples of cultural relevancy, including Dia de los Muertos celebrations. The most impactful to me and many families I talked to was prominent signage in Spanish at graduations. I also have noted a marked improvement in the Spanish translation of documents coming out of YSD. I also want to call out the move to a single source of communication for parents. I heard from many parents that the number of communication channels is confusing. The new communication system is a welcome change. Any comments here? Okay. Moving on. The next set of comments is for innovative and creative expression. I note that Hispanic students are disproportionately not enrolling in fine arts programs, 40%, although Hispanic students are 79% of the district. Why is that? So that's another question for the retreat, and we can dig a little deeper into that data. Anytime you guys want to stop and discuss any of these, just shout out. The next comment is for alignment of resources. The district is intentionally focused on aligning resources to student needs. We've made a significant investment in various areas throughout the district, including providing additional mental health resources, purchasing a new student health center, expanding our early learning programs, and focusing on staff recruitment and retention. The next comment, I believe, is for the teaching and learning environment. Her comment is that two things I'd like to highlight are, one, the district's work in developing, revising, and implementing COVID-19 protocols to ensure the health of our students and staff. We have not had significant issues due to these closely monitored and reported protocols. And 2, the work done over the last year on the new equity policy. The equity policy and the work that will result from the policy will pave the way for a truly equitable and just school environment. And I don't know that she had a closing comment or not. Let's get to that one. Oh yeah, here it is. It's clear the district is moving hard to put student needs first and is putting many supports in place to ensure our students feel safe, secure, and healthy. These efforts will hopefully pave the way for increased student achievement scores. So that's the extent of her comments. Does any board member wish to discuss any of those that I've read?
Yeah, I think that first comment she had on the mastery of basics has always been a question, right? What is significant improvement? What is progress? I think that's a discussion we've been having for years. So I look forward to that discussion in our retreat, and perhaps even looking at our policy, maybe fine tuning that a little bit, so that it's more in line with the definition or the interpretation of the board. So
okay.
Yeah, I like your idea of discussing that, and so we can figure out what that actually means to the board. So
okay.
Mhm.
Anything else? Okay. All right. So we will move forward with approval of this monitoring report at this time, and then hold the comments for a separate discussion at the retreat, so that the whole board is a part of that discussion and we have a general understanding of why Graciela made some of the comments that she did. Okay. So I would entertain a motion for approval of policy 1000.1.0, Global Ends Statement Monitoring Report.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Norm, seconded by Raymond. Is there any discussion?
No.
I know that I think we want to see drastic improvement, right, in test scores and in the ends, right? And I know that for me, the pandemic threw us for a loop, right? And I know that
big old curveball for 2 years.
Huge. So I think that as a board and I think our community has to understand that the school district, right, that curveball came in, and our district has really been working hard to address all the other needs that were created by the pandemic, right? The mental health needs and so forth and so on, and the infections and everything that the government's pushing down to, in terms of protocols and how to deal with the pandemic and infections in the state and the governor and all those types of things. It's really, really a lot of work that the school district has doing, while the student achievement is not where we want it. I think we've made great strides in I think unintentionally moving into, I think, in more of the technology age, right, with online instruction and getting the district to speed on that. So I think that, while I personally don't like the test scores the way they are, they've been reported this year, we've made some progress in terms of addressing the needs of our students. So, and all the new initiatives that are going on currently in the district, I think we'll see the fruit of that labor, the fruit of those interventions and innovation and everything that we're doing now. we'll see those in the next few years. So just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, Raymond. I would not disagree at all. I think you have to have the foundation, and part of that foundation is for students to feel that they're safe and secure, and the district providing and kind of shoring up the supports that our students need for that foundation is going to pay off down the road. Because if kids don't feel safe, or if they're hungry, or if their medical needs aren't being met, it's hard to focus on learning.
Yes. You know, and I just want to make one more comment. I know that I appreciate our superintendent's approach to this is he's accepting full responsibility, right? He's not trying to fluff any numbers. He's not trying to hide or to do anything, right? He's saying, this is our issue. This is our challenge. And this is what we're doing to correct it, to improve it. And as we saw presentations by his cabinet and some of the leaders that are in the district central offices, they're doing a lot of good stuff in addressing those the concerns the board has in terms of student achievement. And so I do appreciate that. And I know that it's all going to come to fruition here soon, right? We're going to see those numbers and everything start going through the roof. So I look forward to that, and I appreciate the leadership of our superintendent and all his staff. So
Thank you, Raymond. Any other discussion from board members? Okay, we have a
Should I take
motion
the vote?
and a second, and I was just going to ask you to call the roll.
Sorry for interrupting.
That's all right.
Mr. Navarro Jr.,
aye.
President Rice,
Aye.
Mr. Walker,
Aye.
Mr. Beckett.
Abstain.
Motion passes 3 yeas, 0 nays, and 1 abstain.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you. Next, we have monitoring report for 1000.2.3, financial condition and activities. Becky.
Thank you, President Rice. Barb, are you going to bring this up on the screen? Thank you. I am pleased to bring the financial conditions and activities 1000.2.3 for as of December 2021 forward. The policy statement with respect to the district's actual ongoing financial condition and activities, the superintendent will not cause or allow the development of fiscal jeopardy or material deviation of actual expenditures from board of directors priorities established in ends, goals, policies. There are 12 items in this policy, and I am pleased to report they're all in compliance. My curiosity is whether you want me to go in detail through each one, or if I can summarize for you this evening.
Since the board has had an opportunity to review your report, let's just summarize tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. So item number 1, expending more funds than have been received in the fiscal year unless revenues are made available. I certify that the unreserved unassigned fund balance at fiscal year end is 5% as prescribed by the board in this policy. Number 2, the superintendent will not indebt the organization or create obligations over a longer term than revenues can be safely projected. I certify that all current and encumbered obligations did not exceed the 2020-21 budget expenditures adopted by the board. Number 3, superintendent will not fail to maintain an unreserved fund balance of 5% or greater of the total general fund budget. I certify that the district's 2020-21 general fund fiscal year end unreserved unassigned fund balance at $12.7 million is 5% of the general fund expenditure budget. Number 4, Superintendent will not fail to settle payroll and debts in a timely manner. And I certify that all the payroll, vendor, and long-term obligations were processed and paid in a timely manner. Number 5, the superintendent will not allow tax payments or other government-ordered payments or filings to be overdue. And I certify that all the government payments and reports were processed and were paid in a timely manner. And number 6, superintendent any restricted reserves for any use other than its intended purpose without board approval. And I certify that the district reserves have been utilized solely by the programs that generated the funding. Number 7, the superintendent will not fail to aggressively pursue receivables after a reasonable grace period. And I certify that the district invoices customers promptly and maintains an aggressive collection practice for those that fail to pay in a timely manner. Number 8, superintendent will not undertake capital building projects without assurance of available funding to complete the project. And I certify that the district has not undertaken any capital building projects without formal board approval. Number 9, the superintendent will not receive, process, or disperse funds under internal controls that are insufficient under the State of Washington Accounting Manual for Public School Districts. And I certify that the district's finance department adheres to strict internal controls, which is affirmed by the 2019-20 State Audit Report. And number 10, superintendent will not fail to keep complete and accurate financial records by funds and accounts in accordance with the Washington State School District Accounting Manual. And I certify that the monthly budget status report provided to the board displays activity for each fund maintained by the district. Number 11, the superintendent will not fail to provide the board with projections on any significant, I'm sorry, did I skip to 12? Am I on 11 or 12? I'm sorry.
You're on 11.
Thank you. Superintendent will not fail to present at least a brief verbal report to the board, which summarizes written information provided when updated financial information is available. And I certify that each month the superintendent or designee provides a brief report of the current monthly financial position and enrollment numbers compared to the previous year's corresponding numbers. And finally, number 12, the superintendent will not fail to provide the board with projections on any significant financial impacts of past or proposed legislation. And I certify that any significant financial impact to the district as a result of the 2021 legislation is incorporated into the 2021-22 budget. I have no recommendations for changes to the policy, and I am happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Becky. Any questions from board members?
It's a lot of numbers to go through tonight.
Yeah, it is. This is the Becky show tonight.
It really is. How did that happen, Barb?
So if there are no questions at this time, Barb will send out a Survey Monkey to the board members tomorrow on this particular policy. Responses back to her are due by the 10th, which I think is Thursday?
This Friday.
Okay. And then we will review this at the meeting on the 14th. We'll review the results of the survey. Okay. So watch your emails tomorrow. Next, we have a review of board policy 1000.4.4, monitoring the superintendent performance. Ryan, for your information, what we do with board policies is that one board member volunteers or is voluntold to lead us through a discussion on that particular policy. And then, as with other policies, we'll have a Survey Monkey go out on this particular policy. I know that there are some minor changes that we will have to discuss and take care of for this particular policy, but we'll address those as we go through. Do I have a board member who would be willing to lead us through this particular, a discussion on this particular policy? I'm pretty good at wait time, guys.
So are we discussing, or are we just reading and summarizing the policy as it's stated right now?
Maybe a little bit of both.
Okay, well, I'm happy to read through it.
Okay.
So that's fine. Let me go to my bigger screen where I can increase the size. Okay, policy 1000.4.4, monitoring superintendent performance. The overall statement says systematic and rigorous monitoring of the superintendent's job performance will be made solely against the only expected superintendent job outputs, which are reasonable progress toward accomplishment of board policies on ends and goals, and organizational operation within the boundaries established in board policies on executive limitations. Accordingly, number one, monitoring is to determine the degree to which board policies are being met. Information that does not do this will not be considered to be monitoring information. Two, the board will acquire monitoring data by one or more of three methods: by internal report, by external report, or by direct board inspection. And I will skip the descriptions of those. People can read those on their own. Number three, the consistent performance standard for executive limitations policies shall be whether the superintendent has reasonably interpreted the policy and its subparts and complied with the provisions of the board policy being monitored. Number four, the consistent performance standards for ends goals shall be whether the superintendent has reasonably interpreted the policy and its parts, developed quantitative indicators and benchmarks for the establishment and achievement of targeted goals in the core academic areas, and achieved annual reasonable progress toward achieving the board's described ends and goals policies. Number five, in its monitoring, the board will include incidental reports that the superintendent and the board agree meet the intent of reasonable interpretation of performance reporting. Number six, each report of monitoring data will generate 3 board agenda items that will be a part of open public board meetings. First, an opportunity for the superintendent to submit and explain his monitoring report. Second, an opportunity for board discussion and consideration as to whether or not the superintendent has met the board policy within the specified limitations. And third, a vote of the board to accept or not the report of the superintendent. At the discretion of the board chair, the second and third steps, as noted above, may be combined if there is no apparent disagreement as to whether or not the superintendent is in compliance. Number 7, the board will make the final determination as to whether the superintendent's interpretation is reasonable, whether the superintendent is in compliance, and whether reasonable progress is being made. In doing so, the board will apply the reasonable person standard. Number 8, by April 1 of each year, the board will conduct a formal summative evaluation of the superintendent. The summative evaluation will be based upon data collected during the year from the monitoring of ends goals and executive limitations policies. The board will prepare a written evaluation document. That evaluation document will consist of 1, a summary of the data derived during the year, 2, conclusions based upon the board's prior actions during the year relative to the superintendent's interpretation of each ends goal, 3, conclusions based upon the board's prior action during the year relative to whether the superintendent has reasonably interpreted and operated within the established boundaries, and 4, other occurrences or events that have occurred in the performance evaluation year but were outside the calendar of monitoring reports. And so for Ryan's benefit, that just we have examined these things over the course of the year. They're spread out over the year. And then at the end of before that April 1st deadline, we do a summative evaluation. So that's partly what we've been doing, along with some of the standards we've been going through in this meeting and the other one you participated in. Number 9, superintendent contract extension and remuneration will be decided after review on monitoring reports submitted during the superintendent's contract year. 10, all policies that instruct the superintendent will be monitored at a frequency and by a method chosen by the board. The board can monitor any policy at any time by any method, but will ordinarily depend on a routine schedule. And following is a detailed list of of the policies that we review and how frequently we review them. But I'm not going to go through all those. You can read those at your leisure. Number 11, all employment decisions related to the superintendent remain the sole discretion of the board. Thus ends the reading of policy 1000.4.4.
Thank you, Norm. The one edit that I think we need to make is based on changes that were made to the superintendent's, pardon me, the superintendent's contract last year, whereby the April 1 date shifted to February 1.
Okay.
So, Barb, if you could make that edit, and we'll consider that for first reading next month. And then, because we will be conducting a superintendent evaluation as a part of our retreat in January in order to meet that February 1 deadline. Okay. Any other comments or discussion on this policy?
I was trying to consider Graciela's comments in terms of the reasonable interpretation. I think it's all here. I don't know if we need to change and narrow the scope of that definition, but I think it's all here as long as it's reasonable, right? And the board did vote on the last policy that it was reasonable interpretation by the superintendent. So I'm just kind of looking at whether or not, I mean, it's good to discuss things, but I'm starting to think after reviewing this policy that we do have a good policy in place and the superintendent has followed it right to the T, and our job is then to use that reasonable interpretation approach, or standard.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just kind of making me think about Graciela's comments and the discussion we just had a few minutes ago.
Okay. Well, I think we owe it to her to let her explain the comments in her own words. But I would agree that this policy provides us with the flexibility that we need when reviewing monitoring reports. Okay. Is there other discussion?
You're on mute, President Rice.
Okay, it's the one time that I do that during a meeting. Seeing none, Barb will send the survey out to board members tomorrow. Comments due back on Friday, and then we'll have the approval of this board policy next Tuesday. Okay. And in the meantime, we're going to change April 1 to February 1 and set that up for first reading. Anything else with this? Okay. Thank you very much. Next are our approvals. We have one approval tonight, and that is for the bargaining agreement with the Yakima Association of Paraeducators. I'm assuming that's Anthony.
Yes.
Correct.
Thank you, President Rice. The requested action today is that the Board of Directors approves the agreement between the Yakima Paraeducation Association and the Yakima School District. This action aligns with the Yakima School District's Strategic Plan Alignment Number 2. The fiscal impact is yet to be determined. The background information regarding the association has completed, resulting in a 3-year agreement. This would include the 2021 through 2024 school years. For this calendar year, or this school year, 2021 through 22, an increase to the base salary of 4.73% for the starting rate. For year 2, an increase to the base starting wage of 0.5% plus the IPD. For those who are unfamiliar with IPD, that is this state's funding equivalent to a COLA, or what they call the inflation price deflator. In year 3, 2023 through 2024, an increase in the base wage salary of 1% plus IPD. There was a restructuring of the vacation stipend, and that amount was rolled into their hourly rate. So I feel there's a need for a slight explanation, which is for this group, they did not have a traditional vacation. They had vacation that had been bargained into their contract, yet they were not allowed to take it because they are 9-month employees. So it was divided into equal increments and it was paid out in a stipend. I think that hurts us when we are trying to attract employees to fill this position, and it would be better converted to an hourly rate, rolled into their hourly rate, and then have the increases apply from that point forward, so that we have an accurate hourly reflection on the advertisement when trying to fill these positions. I think that is something that has negatively hurt us, and that's why we did this. Also, the longevity recognition added with the additional steps to the salary schedule for 15 and 20 years. A paraeducator workday was extended by 30 minutes to be 7 hours a day. They were typically there for 7 hours, but a half hour of that is unpaid lunch. It is now 7.5 hours, including a half hour unpaid lunch. That increase was intended to assist with their office administrative duties, as well as collaboration with their teachers. When I say office, we send them emails, we send them other communication. They need to have the time to be able to perform those duties. There was a sick leave incentive and very few people had ever received it. So we raised it to $350, but decreased the amount of days that they would be eligible to get it, hoping that that would provide better coverage for our students, and increase the educational stipend for an AA or 90 credits from $75 to $75, and for a bachelor's degree to $100. The membership of the Yakima Paraeducation Association voted on November 15, 2021 to ratify the collective bargaining agreement as amended through the tentative agreements reached between the two bargaining teams. The district bargaining team is now seeking approval from the board of directors. I would like to thank and acknowledge the YAP, or the Yakima Association of Paraeducators bargaining team president, Tiffany Moritz, Raquel Cortez, Maria DeLong, co-president Janelle Engelhardt, and Renee Lackey, And I would also like to thank the district's team of HR Director Chris Miller, Assistant Superintendent Dr. Jenny Rodriguez, her assistant Ilda Parra, and Olivia Martinez from HR.
Thank you, Anthony. Any questions from board members?
Well, it's not in the contract, but what's the base salary pay for a paraeducator in the district now?
I don't know, but if you give me just a couple of seconds, I will get that for you.
Okay.
I didn't have it off the top of my head. I'll have to search through my tentative agreement document.
Okay. And just one comment, I really love these 3-year contracts. It's so much nicer on our staff and on you and on planning and so on to have a contract that is in existence longer than a year, so we don't go through this process every single year. I just think that's so nice to see that coming through every time.
Thank you very much. It's with intention because of the planning process and trying to get stability. And I appreciate you letting me know that.
Thank you, Norm. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. I would agree with Norm that having a 3-year contract really does provide for more stability, not only for the employees, but also for the district for planning purposes. Please extend our appreciation to all the members of the bargaining teams. We know that these are not easy discussions to have, but we appreciate everybody working toward a common goal and coming out with a product that the bargaining members agreed to. If there's no other questions at this time. Okay. The board is being asked to approve the agreement between the Yakima Para-Educator Association and the Yakima School District. Do I have a
So moved.
Second.
Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I have a little spinny thing that says I've lost my network connection, so we'll continue. We have a motion because I can't see you. I don't know who did it. So we have a motion and
Mr. Walker moved, and the second was Mr. Navarro Jr. It looks like she did end up freezing on us and losing her connection, so I can stall and wait for her to come back for the vote.
If I may answer the question by Mr. Walker,
Mm-hmm.
starting rate is $19.50.
Okay. Thank you.
Would it be wise for us to take a 5-minute break while we wait for President Rice to reemerge?
Might be a good idea since we usually take a break before executive session if we need to have that anyway. It's 5:55.
Wait.
She's back.
Coming back.
Okay. You're on mute though.
I don't know what happened. I didn't touch anything except the mouse. So do we have a vote?
Yes, Norm made the move. Seconded was Raymond Navarro Jr. And so now we'll go ahead and take the vote, but it looks like Anthony has his hand raised.
Anthony, go
President
ahead.
Rice, I wanted to let you know that the response to Mr. Walker's question is $19.50. I thought it was pertinent to let you know that information before you take the vote.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, Barb, could you take the roll?
Well,
Mr. Navarro Jr.?
we passed forward discussion.
Well,
Right.
I said it. You just didn't hear it because I wasn't connected.
That's fair.
Okay,
Is there
sure.
discussion?
I just want to add to the comments that I want to thank Anthony for his work on this contract. For me, it shows respect, appreciation, acknowledgement of the role. Been very important job that paraprofessionals in the Yakima School District have. And so, again, for me, this is awesome. 3 years contract, and we're acknowledging the wonderful work that they do. So, just want to make that comment.
Thank you, Raymond. Any other discussion? Barb, could you call the roll, please?
Yes, Mr. Navarro Jr.,
Aye.
President Rice,
Aye.
Mr. Walker,
Aye.
Mr. Beckett.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. Okay. We've reached the end of our regular agenda. Mr. Superintendent, do we have a need for executive session?
We do have a need for executive session.
For how long and for what reason?
20 minutes. And lease purchase of real estate.
Okay. All right, I need a motion to move into executive session for 20 minutes for the purpose of discussing lease or purchase of real estate.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Raymond, seconded by Norm. Is there any discussion? Barb, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Navarro Jr.,
Aye.
President Rice,
Aye.
Mr. Walker,
Aye.
Mr. Beckett.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay. And Barb, you'll set us up to join the executive session, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do board members need a 5-minute break between? Everybody's here. Our apologies. Ryan had a previous commitment that he was late for and he had to leave. But we had a good discussion in executive session and we are prepared with some motions as a result of the discussion from executive session. So, Bob, if you could, I made notes, but if I misstate my notes, you'll correct me, correct?
Yeah, could I state the first motion because I think I didn't make it very clear what I was going to
Okay,
be moving.
go ahead.
On the first motion, we would ask that it be a motion authorizing the superintendent or his designee to contract with Realtor Dustin Dirks with the Windermere Real Estate in Yakima to assist in acquiring property for the district's use as an innovation center.
Okay. The board heard the request for the motion. Do I have a so moved from board members?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Norm, seconded by Raymond. Any discussion?
No.
All right. And you'll get the proper wording to Barb so that she doesn't have to scramble, right?
Yes, I'll do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So, Barb, could you call the roll, please?
Yes, Mr. Navarro Jr.,
Aye.
President Rice,
Aye.
Mr. Walker.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you. The second motion is authorization for an appraisal to be conducted to determine fair market value. Is that all, Bob?
Before the proposed innovation center site.
Yes, okay. So the motion is to authorize the conduct of an appraisal to determine fair market value for the Innovation Center site.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay. Barb, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Navarro Jr.,
Aye.
President Rice,
Aye.
Mr. Walker.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0.
Okay, and then the third motion is to authorize the superintendent to move forward with a purchase or sale agreement for the proposed Innovation Center site pending board approval.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Raymond, seconded by Norm. Is there discussion? Okay, Barb, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Navarro Jr.,
Aye.
President Rice,
Aye.
Mr. Walker.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you very much. Is there anything else for the good of the order? Okay, thank you all for hanging in there. Bob, I hope your throat gets better. I've been there and done that, so I know what you're going through. Okay, you all have a great rest of your week, and we will see you next week at the business meeting on Tuesday night. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.